In the years following Donald Trump's election victory in 2016, the political climate across North America shifted dramatically. His presidency and policies reverberated not only throughout the United States, but also across the borders, particularly in Canada, where his divisive actions and rhetoric played a crucial role in shaping the political landscape. A seemingly unlikely phenomenon occurred. Donald Trump managed to unite a fractured and divided Canada against him, leading to one of the most surprising political upheavals in Canadian history. As tensions in the US escalated, Canadian political parties found common ground in their opposition to Trump, flipping their election dynamics and reshaping the future of Canadian politics. This story begins with the global political landscape of the mid-2010s. In 2016, as the United States teetered on the edge of an election that would ultimately crown Donald Trump as the 45th president, Canada, a country often known for its politeness and moderation, found itself increasingly engaged with the rhetoric and policies emanating from the South. What initially seemed like an abstract, distant drama soon took on a more tangible form, affecting not just Canada's foreign policy, but its domestic political climate. Trump's controversial actions would lead to one of the most significant shifts in Canada's political dynamics, catalyzing changes that would alter the course of its elections. The Canadian response, united in opposition from the moment Trump took office. His actions sparked outrage across Canada. His stance on trade, immigration, climate change, and foreign relations pushed many Canadians to reconsider their approach to global politics. At the center of the initial backlash was the renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, a deal that had been vital to the Canadian economy for decades. Trump's threats to withdraw from NAFTA, along with the imposition of tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel, ignited a firestorm of anger among Canadian politicians and the public alike. In a rare show of solidarity, Canada's federal and provincial leaders, spanning across party lines, united against Trump's economic policies, recognizing the existential threat they posed to the nation's economy. But the opposition to Trump went beyond economics. His inflammatory comments on immigration, race, and his frequent attacks on marginalized communities resonated deeply with many Canadians who prided themselves on their nation's inclusive and diverse values. The Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, often found himself in the uncomfortable position of publicly confronting Trump on a variety of issues, from the US withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement to the Muslim travel ban and the building of a border wall. As Trudeau's government consistently pushed back against Trump's policies, his public image as a progressive leader who championed human rights and climate action was further solidified. In response to Trump's policies, Trudeau sought to position Canada as an alternative leader on the world stage, championing the values of cooperation, openness, and tolerance. This was particularly evident when Canada hosted the G7 summit in 2018, where the Prime Minister confronted Trump directly on trade issues, most notably in the context of the NAFTA renegotiations. The Conservative shift in Canada. A political realignment. What is often overlooked in discussions about Trump's impact on Canada is the way in which his policies created a shifting political landscape within Canada itself. Before Trump's rise, Canada's political scene was marked by clear divisions, especially between the Federal Liberal Party, led by Justin Trudeau, and the Conservative Party of Canada, which had long been a significant political force. The emergence of Trump and the polarizing effect of his presidency, however, had a profound effect on Canadian conservatism. The Conservative Party, under the leadership of Andrew Scheer, found itself at a crossroads. On one hand, it faced internal pressures from right-wing populists who were inspired by Trump's America First rhetoric. On the other hand, it was challenged by the more centrist factions within the party that sought to differentiate themselves from the divisive politics of Trump. Despite this, the party struggled to gain traction in the 2019 federal election. Many conservative candidates attempted to align themselves with Trump's populist brand of politics, but this approach backfired, as Canadian voters, particularly in urban centres, rejected Trump's divisive rhetoric. The result was a loss for the Conservative Party, which had hoped to make significant gains at the most striking about the 2019 election was how the Canadian electorate responded to Trump's influence. In the face of his policies, Canadians increasingly turned to their own progressive ideals, choosing to support candidates who embodied a more inclusive, multicultural vision of Canada. This ideological shift helped solidify the Liberal Party's hold on power, while at the same time contributing to the rise of other progressive political movements across the country. Ultimately, it was the unifying opposition to Trump that led to a surprising and seismic change in Canada's political direction. The unexpected election flip. Trump as a catalyst as Canada prepared for its 2021 federal election. The influence of Donald Trump was still palpable. His tenure had polarized the political climate not only in the US, but also in Canada, where his actions continued to provoke strong reactions across the political spectrum. However, something unexpected began to happen. The Conservative Party, attempting to recover from its losses in 2019, found itself torn between traditional conservative principles and the rising tide of populist movements that mirrored Trump's rhetoric. In contrast, the Liberal Party's strong stance against Trump's divisive politics and its emphasis on multilateralism and cooperation with global allies had positioned it as the most prominent force of resistance to Trump's influence. This alignment with progressive ideals and rejection of Trump's worldview became a rallying cry for voters across the country. While the Conservative Party struggled with its identity and failed to present a unified front, the Liberals were able to maintain a solid voter base, particularly in the urban regions, which saw Trump's brand of politics as a threat to their values of inclusivity and progress. As the election day approached, the campaign discourse in Canada became dominated by the same key issues that Trump had raised in the US: immigration, trade, and nationalism. In many ways, the Canadian election became a referendum on Trump's legacy, as Canadians debated how best to respond to the ongoing political turbulence emanating from their southern neighbour. In the end, the Conservative Party's attempt to mirror Trump's populist message failed to resonate with enough voters, and the Liberals held on to power, solidifying their position as the party of resistance against Trumpism. The global backlash. Canada's position in the world. Trump's influence on Canada didn't end with the election results. Throughout his presidency, the United States was embroiled in a series of international crises, many of which had significant implications for Canadian foreign policy. The US's withdrawal from international agreements, its growing isolationist stance, and its unpredictable approach to global relations forced Canada to recalibrate its own international strategy. Trudeau, along with other global leaders, was tasked with navigating a rapidly changing world order in which traditional alliances were being tested and global challenges required unprecedented cooperation. At the same time, Canada's internal politics were shifting in response to Trump's rise. The political unity that had formed in opposition to Trump began to extend beyond the national level. Provinces and municipalities found themselves increasingly focused on resisting Trump's influence, whether through environmental policies, immigration laws, or trade practices. The fallout from Trump's presidency led to a more engaged and politically active citizenry, one that was determined to uphold the values of peace, diversity, and cooperation. As Canada approached the 2021 election, Trump's shadow loomed large over the political discourse. In the face of his divisive leadership, Canadian voters were faced with a clear choice: embrace the values of unity and inclusivity, or turn toward a more divisive and nationalistic future. The election results were not just a rejection of Trump's policies. They were a reaffirmation of Canada's commitment to a more global, cooperative, and progressive future. In conclusion, the impact of Donald Trump on Canadian politics is a fascinating tale of unity and division, of political realignments and ideological shifts. His influence not only disrupted the political landscape in the United States, but also galvanized Canadian citizens to take a stand in defense of their values. Through the lens of Trump's presidency, Canada experienced a remarkable transformation in its political discourse, culminating in an election that flipped the country's political future upside down.